Hello, hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hey, hey everybody. Jesus. All right. Well, I'm back. Anyway, sorry, I don't know what happened. I had to reboot the work computer. I was still able to stream, so that was good news. This had the zombie up there for you guys. But yeah, so hopefully, yeah, there I am right there. So yay, everybody. So should be back. Yeah. But yeah, I had to reboot the work computer. I use three computers. I use one just for a monitoring computer. I can just look at the chat and everything, and then I use a streaming computer. But the work computer, the audio just died. I mean, literally, it was working for the music, and then when I cut over from the music, then all they just died. It was like, oh no, what do I do? So I tried working some things out to try to fix it, and finally said, oh screw it, I'm just going to reboot the damn thing. So yeah, so you guys got to watch the zombies. So you got some special zombies. So yeah, good deal. Sorry for the lengthy zombie thing on that one, but hey, how's everybody doing? I haven't been on for a week. I've been real busy at work and everything, and every time I got home, I went to try to edit, all those shows for the impeachment hearings, and it was just like I was so wiped out by the time I got home, and it was like, oh, screw it. Then I figured, well, I'll just, either take a nap and then get up and watch HA or something like that. But yeah, good to see you guys back here in the chat and everything, and so I'm really happy that we're back on. It's like I haven't been on for a week, and all of a sudden I come back on and you can't see me. It's like that would have sucked. But anyway. See that story I put up there, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire? That was a story from 2017. January 2017 was in Politico. Let me back it up here. There we go. You can actually see that the headline here is from Politico, and that was, again, in 2017 by Kenneth Vogel and David Stern. And the funny thing also is, like, this whole Hunter Biden thing, that came to light in the New York Times, and that was in December 9th, 2015. So, I mean, all this has been going on, and as far as, so as far as, saying, oh, it's been debunked. Well, it's never been debunked because nobody's ever done a hearing on this regarding Ukrainian efforts to interfere in our election in 2016. So it hasn't been debunked. It's like in Alexandra Chalupa, you heard Devin Nunes on Friday say, well, Thursday actually, you say, well, if this Ukrainian interference was debunked, how come you didn't allow us to call Alexandra Chalupa, to testify? Then she could have debunked it right there on the spot. And then it was funny because when, see, who was it that was asking, I believe it was Mr. Weintraub was talking to Fiona Hill, and, she came and made that statement like, oh, you guys don't believe there's Russian interference, and then, of course, everybody showed her, hey, look, we wrote the report in 2016 when we were the majority in the House, and we said there was, some Russian interference. We wrote a report on it, and, to see what anybody would do about it, if anything, if the Obama administration, turned a blind eye to it. But he goes, but as far as this Ukrainian thing goes, you can't deny the facts on that. And she was nodding with him. They didn't show that on mainstream media. She was nodding with him, and she goes, no, she didn't like the attacks made against candidate Trump at the time. And what she was referring to, and we'll get to that down here in a little bit, she's referring to attacks by a Ukrainian ambassador and also a minister over there in the Ukraine as well, saying Trump is a bad person. And the only thing Trump said was, okay, he said two things. He said, okay, Putin will not invade Ukraine on my watch. It's not going to happen if I'm president, so don't worry about it. But then they asked him about Crimea, and he goes, well, I mean, what do you want me to do? Go to, start a nuclear war with Russia to get Crimea back for you? Well, they didn't like that answer. I guess they thought we were supposed to go start a nuclear war with Russia to get, Crimea back for them. Well, that's not necessarily our responsibility. And if President Obama actually had armed, let's see, what does it say? Oh, and if President Obama actually armed the Ukrainians to provide lethal aid back in 2012, then maybe the Russians wouldn't have attacked in 2014. But, he had all kinds of deals going on. President Obama had all kinds of deals going on with Vladimir Putin at the time. He did a deal with Putin to pull the anti-missile defense system out of Poland. That was the whole open mic thing with President Medvedev. And for all I know, the Ukraine, letting the Ukrainian people go, letting Crimea go is also part of the deal also. But, everybody says, oh, Trump was holding up the aid. Well, before Trump got in office, there was no, lethal defensive weapons. There was no Javelin anti-tank, anti-air missiles. There were no U.S. military planes flying over the Ukraine, Ukraine proper. That's been under President Trump's watch. So they say, oh, he's holding it up for 55 days. Well, 55 days, but better than 4 years. It never got there. Period. But anyway, I shot some a video from the hearings, and so I got some clips from him that were good. I recorded all of them from the whole week, but it seemed like I didn't want to go back and show Volker and everybody else. So I just figured I'd show from Fiona Hill and that guy Holmes, David Holmes, who's a real jerk, by the way. We'll get into him a little bit in his story. We'll get into a little story about Fiona Hill. It was kind of weird. They started talking about Roger Stone and everything and George Soros, and the person who brought it up was a Democrat, and I'm sure everybody else on the committee was like, "What are you doing?" Because I had never heard anything about it, and then next thing I know, she's defending George Soros. And, then she seems like she's working at Brookings Institute. She knows a lot of people on the Atlantic Council. We'll get to that as well. And then as far as, who else is on the Atlantic Council? Well, I don't know. The original founder of CrowdStrike, Mr. H.A. Goodman talks about CrowdStrike all the time. Well, he's on the Atlantic Council as well. So, I mean, all these, and they're all in bed together. And you have, people there from, we're at there, the Baltic states, you got people there, Estonia, the former Estonian prime minister is on the Atlantic Council, all these people who want to go to war with Russia. And then they were saying, well, gee, the founder of CrowdStrike, well, he's Russian, why would Trump say, he's pro-Ukrainian? Well, yeah, but they leave out a part that in the guy's own biography, and we'll get to it, he says he escaped Russia with his family in 1994. So, I mean, he's not pro-Russian. He hates Russia. I mean, he, quote-unquote, him and his family escaped from Russia in 1994 and went to Canada first and ended up getting into the United States and lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, I mean, I just love how the media doesn't talk about that. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the videos I got here. Let me get back down to here. Okay. All right, so let's see, and this should be, yep. All right, where is it? Oh, here we go. It should be here. All right, let's take a look over here and see what we got. Yeah, so, I'm crossing my fingers because, after that little debacle there at the beginning, let's hopefully this will be just fine. All right, here we go.
And thank you both for being here. In 1998, I voluntarily joined the United States Army Reserve because I saw our country under attack time and time again. Bill Clinton was the president. I didn't vote for Bill Clinton, but he was my commander-in-chief. It didn't matter that I didn't vote for him. I'm grateful to live in a country that gets to legitimately elect our leaders. And I've been to places where people don't get to. And it's not pretty. And I respect our system, and I accept the results that are determined by the American people. I deployed to Iraq 2005-2006 as an Army surgeon with soldiers from many backgrounds. The most important thing was we were all Americans. That was first and foremost. In our mission, we treated our troops, we treated the enemy, winning over the hearts and minds of people that never knew us because of their dictator, Saddam Hussein, who told them that we were responsible for all their problems, and that was his narrative. And speaking of narratives, Dr. Hill, I'm sorry, I have to say this. You said based on statements you've heard that some in this committee believe Russia did not conduct a campaign against our country is false. That's Mr. Schiff's narrative. That's where you've heard it. We did a whole report on it. And we agree that Russia has done this since the Soviet Union, and they've actually gotten better at it. That's a problem. But at the same time, certain Ukrainians did work against candidate Trump. Some with the DNC. And if that's debunked, why is it Mr. Schiff has denied DNC operative Alexandra Chalupa from testifying to come forward and debunk it? I ask America, was it good for the country for the DNC and the Clinton campaign to pay Christopher Steele to dig up fake dirt with other foreign service sources on their political rival? Was it good for America to claim having evidence of the president colluding with Russians when he did not, costing the taxpayer millions and being debunked by special counsel? I'd say the false narrative got caught. Was it good for the country, for Americans and foreigners alike, to attempt to entrap members of a United States presidential campaign? System, and
Dr. Hill, you may respond. Dr. Hill,
and I respect our system, and I accept the results that are determined by the American people. I deployed to Iraq 2005-2006 as an Army surgeon with soldiers from many backgrounds. The most important thing was we were all Americans. That was first and foremost. In our mission, we treated our troops, we treated the enemy, winning over the hearts and minds of people that never knew us because of their dictator, Saddam Hussein, who told them that we were responsible for all their problems, and that was his narrative. And speaking of narratives, Dr. Hill, I'm sorry, I have to say this. You said based on statements you've heard that some in this committee believe Russia did not conduct a campaign against our country is false. That's Mr. Schiff's narrative. That's where you've heard it. We did a whole report on it. And we...
Yeah, I mean, so everybody says, oh, Fiona Hill, she's so full of facts and she knows all this. Well, the point is she lied in her first, few minutes of her opening statement. She didn't tell the truth. She's saying that, some people some of the Republicans on the committee don't believe that the Russians interfered. Well, I mean, when they were in the majority, they wrote the report saying in 2016 the Russians interfered. And so, like he goes on to say, if you spent a couple of minutes just looking, you would have seen it. But you just want to believe it because you want to believe the narrative, which means, she has a bias. Her bias is that Republicans bad, and she wants to go to war against Russia. Russia's evil, and she wants us to go to war, bring our troops to bear in a ground war. I mean, she would have probably been jumping up and down if, John McCain got elected president back in, 2008. That's what he wanted to do. Remember, he said, Georgia was in that civil war with Azerbaijan, and the Russians were on the Azerbaijan side, and John McCain says, like 2 months before the election, he goes, "Oh, we're all Georgians." Like, screw you, buddy. We're going to send ground forces over to Georgia to fight Russia in a land war on their home turf. A war they've been were preparing for when they were the Soviet Union for 40 years, and they know that plays backwards and forwards, and they got weapons and arms and everything else stashed all over the place. Are you insane? No, I mean, I'm sure she would be just happy with that. But anyway, let's continue on.
We agree that Russia has done this since the Soviet Union, and they've actually gotten better at it. That's a problem. But at the same time, certain Ukrainians did work against candidate Trump, some with the DNC. And if that's debunked, why is it Mr. Schiff has denied DNC operative Alexandra Chalupa from testifying to come forward and debunk it? I ask America, was it good for the country, for the DNC and the Clinton campaign to pay Christopher Steele to dig up fake dirt with other foreign service sources on their political rival? Was it good for America to claim having evidence of the president colluding with Russians when he did not, costing the taxpayer millions and being debunked by special counsel? I'd say the false narrative got caught. Was it good for the country, for Americans and foreigners alike, to attempt to entrap members of a United States presidential campaign, specifically the Trump campaign? Sadly, I've come to believe through all this that some in power do think it's good. They think it's okay. And now we're here in an impeachment proceeding, certainly a right that Congress has, and apparently even with very partisan rules. But I'm curious, this impeachment inquiry was announced by the Speaker before the whistleblower complaint was even out. I'm curious why the lawyer for the whistleblower announced that the coup to impeach the president, that he announced that right after Trump won. That's pretty damning. I know it hurts after losing an election.
All right. I want you to pay attention to this guy's Holmes. Look at his face. Okay. Now, Weintraub, the congressman, he's about to say something to the effect that I know it's hard when you lose an election, especially if the candidate that you wanted to win was promising you a position in their administration. Now, I want you to look at Holmes's face. This blonde-haired guy sitting next to Fiona Hill. But watch his face, watch his body movement when he says this, and then we're going to show something after this. All right, here you go.
Especially as Americans, we usually get over it. And I imagine it would hurt even more if you were promised a position in the next administration and lost, and your hopes and your dreams are dashed. I've seen hatred for political reasons, specifically on June 14th, 2017 at a ball field.
All right, you see that body movement from him? He was promised a job, and let me see. Now I rebooted, so hopefully all those articles I have are still up there. I think they are. So let me show you something real quick. Okay, this guy is David Holmes, right, or whatever his first name is. I think it's David. Hold on. So all right, let's take a look. Where are we? Back here. Whoop. All right. Let me show you something here. All right. This is all open source stuff. So it's right here. So let me, I'm going to jump over this real quick here. All right, this is from David Holmes' Wikipedia page, and you'll see what I have highlighted there. From 2010 to 2011, a special assistant for South and Central Asia to then Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, William Joseph Burns. Okay, now, let me show you about William Joseph Burns. Okay, now this guy was like his right-hand guy. So, okay, so here's William Joseph Burns, and let's see. And highlight this for you guys. All right, so Burns, this is his Wikipedia page. Burns was widely assumed to be on the presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's short list of Secretary of State nominees had she won. So this guy figures, hey, Burns becomes Secretary of State, I become like the Undersecretary of State, like the Assistant Secretary of State. And Burns was pretty old at the time. In fact, he actually retired because he was old. And John Kerry had asked him to stay on longer than he wanted to. Then President Obama even asked him to stay on longer than he wanted to. He finally retired. But everybody said, hey, look, he's probably going to be Secretary of State. And he probably retired because he wanted to be Secretary of State, and he never got the spot because it's a political appointee. But, there he is. He was going to be on the short list. So this guy's like, oh, Clinton wins. My guy becomes, Secretary of State. I'm like his right-hand man. He's old. When he retires in 4 years, then guess who's going to be Secretary of State? To it, me, blah, blah, blah. And so that's Mr. Burns. If you saw his body language there when he said, especially if, you were promised a position in the new administration if that person had won. Well, he was, my guess. Or at least he thought he was going to get it. So he's probably, pretty pissed off that he never got the spot. So let's jump back over here. All right, so we're going to continue on with this. So as soon as I cut over, it's going to start playing. So here you go.
In Virginia. And I've seen hatred in war. And I know that hatred blinds people. I've been in war, and I've studied war. And coups create division. And it's time for this phase of the publicly announced and proclaimed Democrat coup to end. Thank you for your service. Thanks for being here, and I yield back.
All right, so there you go. So, yeah, everybody's got a backstory. So let's see. I'm not sure who's next. I want to say it's Jim Jordan. I'm not sure, but let's take a look. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll find out together. Here we go.
Thank you. Dr. Hill, Ms. Holmes, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's actually Mr. Stewart. I like him because he's kind of like the reasonable guy, but he can really strike a pretty good blow. So let's take a look at Mr. Stewart here.
I actually have no questions for you that haven't already been asked or made any points that haven't already been made. And I guess I'll just conclude by something I've said before. This Impeach-a-Palooza tour finally comes to an end. I mean, a year of resistance, 2.5 years of these absurd accusations against the president of Russian collusion. We've gone from quid pro quo to bribery to extortion, 7 weeks of hearings, 16 secret closed-door sessions, 12 public hearings now, of which you are the last, hundreds of hours of testimony. And I really think that for those who hate the president, they haven't changed their minds. But there's a lot of Americans who look at this and they think, is that it, really? You're going to impeach and remove a president for this? Now, like I said, if you don't like the president, you've already come to that conclusion. Many people wanted this 3 years ago. But for a lot of Americans, they really look at that, and they can see this. No evidence, zero evidence of any bribery, zero evidence of extortion, zero evidence firsthand of any quid pro quo. And yet, impeachment is almost inevitable. And why? Because the leadership of this committee has been unfair and dishonest. And I know we hear these crocodile tears from some of my colleagues who are heartbroken because they finally have to impeach this president. And we know that's absurd. There's no heartbroken. There's no prayerful tears over this. They're giddy over this. And there's not a person in the country who doesn't know that. Everyone knows what they're going to do next. They're going to impeach the president and they're going to send it on to the Senate. But that is the good news. That's good news. You know, we've all been to a concert. You got the warm-up band, and then you got the main act. And what we've seen here is the warm-up band. This is kind of like the Sioux City Crooners. This is a band that no one's ever heard of. But the warm-up band is over, and now we're going to go on to the main event, and that's in the U.S. Senate. And in the U.S. Senate, there won't be any secret testimony. There's not going to be dishonest leadership or a chairman who refuses to let us ask appropriate questions or to deny a defense. Where in the world, where in the country do you have a trial where the prosecution presents their case and the defense isn't able to? So we'll finally be able to get to the truth. So I'm talking now to my colleagues in the Senate. These are some of the witnesses that you need to.
This is really good here because he's letting them know, okay, yeah, Schiff, you can pull this nonsense, you know, when you're here in the House and your little chairmanship, and you can tell us, you can cut us off, you can allow witnesses to respond even when we don't ask them a question, you can instruct witnesses how to answer or not to answer, you know, you can do all these little shenanigans, play a little game. If you ever notice when Schiff, whenever he's responding to like one of the Republicans, he never looks at them. He's always just looking straight ahead. You know, my opinion is for two reasons. One, he wants the camera time because he knows he's on national TV. But two, he doesn't have any balls, okay? He knows he's full of shit, and he can't look these guys in the eye and just look right at them. You know, if anything, you think he could because he got those big bug eyes. You think he'd be trying to psych people out with him, like, oh, and they'd be like, no, don't look at me. Oh my God, he looked at me like, you know, kind of a Sodom and Gomorrah thing, like you turned to stone or something. You know, like, you know. But I mean, he doesn't even do that. He just keeps looking straight ahead. You know, refuses to even show any kind of respect, or I think he's just afraid to look these people in the eye because he knows they're full of shit. And he knows he knows he's full of shit, and he knows this is just one big political scam, and he's been lying for the last three. I mean, God, I remember every time he'd go on, well, you know, I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and I've seen things. I can't discuss it, but I've seen evidence to show, yeah, you know, Trump did it. Trump colluded with the Russians. Well, I guess, you know, the other, I guess Mueller in his, you know, I mean, Mueller, you can say what you want about his attorneys. They were real assholes and they're real partisan. But let me tell you something. You know, they looked everywhere to try to get something on Trump. And if they didn't find it, it wasn't there. Because those guys, like Weissman and friends, they wanted desperately to find something on Trump. I mean, my God, 2,800 subpoenas, 500 search warrants, 40 FBI agents, 19 attorneys. I mean, good attorneys. I mean, these guys are, you know, these guys are tenacious guys. You know, if they're on your side, great. If they're not, you know, it's kind of not a good thing. But I mean, you know, they turned every rock over to find something, anything that they could pin on Trump, so they could say, yep, he did it. You know, but they couldn't. So, you know, with that great team, they couldn't find anything. But you know, Schiff saw it. Well, what do he do? Like hide it somewhere? Like he's like, you know, write it down, put it in a shoe, and say. And Mueller goes, "Hey, Schiff, I heard you got some stuff on Trump." Oh, well, I can't release it to you. I don't trust you. Well, damn it, I'm the special counsel, man. Give it over. And then he was like, throws a smoke bomb and he runs away because he didn't have shit, and he lied for three years on this nonsense, and he's lying now, and he's full of shit again, and then he lied on national TV. Oh, nobody from my office talked to the whistleblower, and then somebody dimed him out. I don't know who it was. Maybe someone down the hall said, oh yeah, he did. So anyway, like, oh well, yeah, I forgot my staff did, but they didn't tell me who he was. And again, anybody who runs an office, owns an office, owns a small business, and you have staff. And, trust me, your staff tell you everything or they're no longer your staff. So if you think these guys just said, oh, we talked to somebody, but we can't tell you, and Schiff goes, oh, okay, I understand. Are you kidding me? There's no way in hell. There's no way. You can't interview. But let me tell you, when they get to the Senate, you can call those staff members. You can call Schiff. Hey, this is impeachment. You can call anybody you want. There ain't no like, oh, I'm a member of Congress. Oh, no. You ain't going to hide behind that one. So, he wants to get called, fine. Call Hunter. Alexandra Chalupa, call any of her contacts with the DNC, with Hillary Clinton campaign, bring in Nellie Orr with Fusion, just like he's about to tell you. All the people we've been talking about for months. If you want, go back and look at my video from June 18th, kind of go into the whole thing on the Russian collusion thing. And let me tell you something. That is relevant evidence. You can say, oh, well, that's not relevant to the Ukraine thing. Yeah, it is, because it goes to show the president's intent. In other words, did he have a corrupt intent? Was he just trying to go after a political rival, or was he really trying to find out about the corruption from the Ukraine government into the 2016 election? So if you're going to have to then show the corruption, and that's Misford. You're not going to be able to get him, but I don't know, maybe you can find him somewhere. Misford, Downer, let's see who else there. Halper, you can definitely get a hold of. Stefan Halper from DebateGate from Ronald Reagan days when he stole Jimmy Carter's debate preparation materials and gave it to the Reagan campaign. I know I hate that story, but it's true. Anyway, so that guy, and then Comey, Clapper, Brennan, of course, and all their little underlings, and like I sent a super chat to HA last night. I said, either they plead the fifth or they testify. Either way, it's good. Because they plead the fifth, and the American public will see straight up that they're pleading the fifth, which means they're guilty of something. So there you go. And as a defense attorney, probably not supposed to say that, but yes, they probably are. But nonetheless. But okay, let's hear Mr. Stewart.
Call, and these are some of the questions that you need to ask. First, you have to hear from the whistleblower. Now, they can choose to do that in closed session if they want to. I leave that up to them. But you can't initiate an impeachment of the President of the United States and not have to answer some questions. Who did he get his information from? Did he have the classification and the clearances to get that information? What's his relationship with Vice President Biden? Who has he shared that information with, including some members of the committee here? I think our own chairman needs to be called. What interactions did he or his staff have with the whistleblower? Did they help to coordinate or in any way facilitate the complaint? Did they coordinate and facilitate him counsel? What about Hunter Biden? How did he get his job? What did he do to earn his salary? And here's the key to this. Look, if he goes there and makes money, knock yourself out. I don't care. But I want to know, did he have officials or conversations with government officials, and was government policy changed at a particularly high level because of some of those? Devin Archer, former board member from Burisma. Alexandria Chalupa, former DNC official who admitted she provided anti-Trump information to the DNC and to Hillary Clinton. Nellie Orr.
And Ms. Chalupa, guess who she met with in the White House? Dun, da, 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 the whistleblower. During this whole mess, she met with the whistleblower in the White House during the 2016 campaign. So there you go. And in fact, I think he met with her right before the FBI opened their investigation. I think it was in beginning of July 2016. And of course, the famous dinner he went to with Biden and the Italian prime minister. Of course, Italy's got their hands all over this mess. That's why the new Italian prime minister fired the two top intel guys and sent them packing on their merry way. So, so I mean, this is going to get interesting fast. So I'm really looking forward to this and how this plays out. But yeah, so the whistleblower met with Alexandra Chalupa, who had been paid like $400,000 from like 2004 to 2016. when she was running around Ukraine, she got an ambassador over here to write an op-ed, a minister rather to write an op-ed. You had another ambassador sending out tweets, the whole 10 yards from the Ukraine. And they were interfering. I mean, that's all in paper. I mean, he wrote the op-ed for The Hill. I mean, you can look it up. 2016 op-ed The Hill, Ukraine minister. And it's right there. I mean, it's not or ambassador. It's not hard to find. So there it is. It's in literally in black and white, or it's on your computer screen, whatever color your letters on the computer screen are. So you can look it up. And the tweets are still there. Nobody ever took them down from July, August, September of 2016. So yeah, they were interfering. And, but everybody says like, oh, the Russians put this conspiracy theory out. Now that's a new thing. The intelligence officials are briefing Congress saying, the Russians are putting out this Ukrainian conspiracy theory. Again, where do again, Politico wrote the article in January 2017. Two liberal reporters, who I believe formerly had written for or write now for the New York Times, Ken Vogel and David Stearns. So I mean, and then not to mention the op-ed. I mean, the Russians made the Ukrainian ambassador or foreign minister write the op-ed. Come on, get real. It didn't happen. Poroshenko had to apologize to Trump. What? That's not true. A Ukrainian court found that, in fact, Ukrainian government official had interfered in the 2016 election. A Ukrainian court judge, not a Russian court judge, a Ukrainian court. Okay? So, I mean, it's all real. It's all there. So, anyway, yeah, the Senate trial, Trump wants the Senate trial, and I don't blame him. I'll tell you why, because if they get into the Senate and they do like a motion to dismiss to like get rid of it real quick, then it's going to look like, okay, the House were partisans, they made up this phony nonsense. The Senate were partisan, they got rid of it real quick, swept it under the rug. No, it's not going to be like these hearings, okay? You're going to get, McConnell runs the show, and he gets to call any witnesses he wants. And again, they're all relevant. You can't make the objection not relevant because, again, it goes to show the president's intent, and that's always relevant. So all those people come in, and they can do it one of two ways. They can do it like in depositions, or they can do it right there, put them on the stand. You have Chief Justice John Roberts being the presiding judge. Yay, hey. Anyway, here we go.
From Fusion GPS, who helped to create the ridiculous Steele dossier. I'd like to remind us what I said yesterday. The American people expect a lot in politics. They understand the tussle, the fight, the debate, but they also expect basic fairness. And these proceedings have been anything but fair. The Senate has an opportunity to fix that. I am confident they will, and I look forward to them completing the job that we could have done here. And with that, I will yield back.
Mr. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being.
All right, so yeah, so that's pretty good. But yeah, Stewart's one of those guys. Like he's real. Like you look at him, like you can tell he's the kind of guy. If he was in a courtroom, he'd be just like tearing into you. You wouldn't even know it. You'd be like, "Oh, did I just get beat up?" And everybody looks at you. Yeah, man, he just beat you up. He's like, "What happened? How did that happen?" So let's see who's next. I'm trying to remember who's next. Coming up, we'll find out together. So let's take a look at this.
Before I turn to our witnesses, I just wanted to say to
Oh, Ms. Stefanik. Yeah, she's done a great job through all of this. Trump gave her a lot of praise. So, yeah, she's done a really great job through all of this. So here we go.
my Democratic colleagues, not a single Republican member of this committee has said that Russia did not meddle in the 2016 elections. As the ranking member stated, we published a report focused on Russian active measures in 2016 with policy recommendations as to how we strengthen our cyber resiliency and election security to counter Russia. I myself have worked with members of this very committee on this issue, but also on the House Armed Services Committee. So to have our Democratic colleagues say these untruthful statements just reeks of political desperation in their continued obsession to manipulate mainstream media coverage. But the good news is the American people understand that this has been a partisan process from the start. The Democratic coordination with the whistleblower, the incessant and astounding leaks, the unprecedented closed-door process, closed to the majority of members, closed to the press, closed to the people, starting this inquiry without taking a vote. And then when finally forced to take a vote, the vote was with bipartisan opposition. Now, with 4 minutes left, I'm going to turn to our two witnesses. Thank you both for your service. Thank you, Dr. Hill, for your comments on the personal attacks. I wanted to ask you each fact-based questions. Dr. Hill, you testified that you handed over your duties on the NSC to Tim Morrison on July 15th and that you physically left the White House on July 19th, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So that means that by the time there was the July 25th call with President Trump and President Zelensky, you were no longer on the NSC. correct?
Actually, I was still technically on the payroll of the NSC until the end of August 30th of 2019, but I was not physically in the building, and I'd handed over my duties to Mr. Morrison.
And you were not on the call?
I was not on the call. That is absolutely correct.
And it's also correct that you did not participate in the preparation of talking points or the specific coordination of setting up the call?
Not for that call, but let me just say for the record that there had been a long anticipation that eventually there would be a call. So there was a call package that was prepared in advance. I just cannot say how much of that call package that had perhaps been prepared since, for example, the inauguration of President Zelensky was then used as the basic material for that call. So I did take part in the preparation of that standard call package, but I did not take part in any preparation for the specific call on July 25th.
And the first time you actually read the transcript of the call was when it was released to the public?
That's correct.
Mr. Holmes, I wanted to turn to you. Good to see you again. Thank you for mentioning the bipartisan delegation that I led on behalf of the House Armed Services Committee with my friend, Representative Anthony Brown from Maryland. We did have an exceptionally informative visit where we highlighted the bipartisan congressional support for Ukraine, in particular the importance of countering Russian aggression. And we discussed in the briefings at the embassy the importance of defensive lethal aid in the form of javelins, which, as you both, I think you stated today, is, quote, an important strategic deterrent to Russia. And I just want to highlight on the record, I know this has been asked, the javelins were provided by the Trump administration and not the Obama administration, correct?
That's correct. And I would just say, I think we discussed the importance of all our security assistance to Ukraine, not just the javelins.
Absolutely. All of our security assistance, which I strongly support. Again, thank you for being a host on that. Dr. Hill, turning back to you, there's been discussion about the process of scheduling the meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump. And you testified that there was hesitancy.
It was funny to see that guy's face. He looked kind of like sad, like he wasn't getting asked another question. It's like, what? I don't get any more attention from you? You're not going to talk to me anymore? It's like, just when you saw him, like kind of like look away, like, oh, okay, I guess Miss Hill gets all the questions. I'm just some idiot sitting here.
To schedule this meeting until after the Ukrainian parliamentary elections. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And that's because there was speculation in all analytical circles, both in Ukraine and outside the Ukraine, that Zelensky might not be able to get the majority that he needed to form a cabinet, correct?
That is correct.
And you also testified that another aspect of the NSC's hesitancy to schedule this meeting was based on broader concerns related to Zelensky's ability to implement anti-corruption reforms. And this was in specific relation to Ukrainian oligarchs who basically were the owner of the TV company that Mr. Zelensky's program had been a part of. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just distilling this down to the key facts, I wanted to ask both of you three key questions. So the fact of the matter is Ukraine ultimately did receive the aid, correct, Mr. Holmes?
Ultimately.
Yes. And Dr. Hill?
Correct, ultimately.
And there was no investigation into the Bidens, correct, Mr. Holmes?
They did not open a new investigation into the Bidens. No.
Correct. And Dr. Hill?
Correct.
And there was, in fact, a meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky ultimately at the UN. Is that correct?
The president invited Zelensky to the Oval Office at a date undetermined. That has not yet happened.
The meeting at the UN. President Trump and President Zelensky met at the UN.
They did, but not in the Oval Office.
But they did have a meeting at the UN.
They did, ma'am.
And Dr. Hill, they did. Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Swalwell.
Dr. Hill.
Sorry, I had to cut off Swalwell there because, he was probably going to, lay one out there again for everybody. I don't want it blowing up the microphones. But yeah, I mean, she just, the Republicans did a good job on this, and I hate to say it, but like the attorney that the Republicans had designated, he was awful. I'll just say that. I mean, I'm sure every attorney out there was watching him. It sounds like when he was reading from the transcript from the questions he asked in the closed hearing without the TV cameras, it sounded like he did really, really good. But when he got in front of those cameras, I think you could see the contortions on his face. You could tell he was just nervous as hell. Like he was like, "Oh my God," he didn't. You could tell he didn't like it. He was very uncomfortable. He very unsure of himself. But it sounds like when they're reading the transcript of the questions he asked, in the basement, he sounded like he did really good. But he just didn't do good in front of the cameras. Some people are camera shy. You don't have to be good in front of a camera to be a good trial attorney. Although, albeit it does help because you should be able to be good in front of a camera, and because when you're in front of a jury, you got like anywhere from 14 to 18 people staring at you. You better not get nervous, or your client's either going to lose a lot of money or is going away for a very long time. So anyway, let's take a look. I'm not sure who's next. Let me take a look at the chat here. Yeah, a good chat down there. Let's see. Oh, Vince, you quit smoking. Okay, gotcha. But yeah, hopefully smoking cigarettes is not making you want to have a cigarette or something. But yeah, but we've heard that from people. People who quit smoking, they say, like, even 20 years later, oh, I was thinking, boy, today I wanted a cigarette. I'm like, God, how does that happen 20 years later? But let's see. So we got Solix, and I see Ronald and Vince and Keeley up there, and I saw a bunch of people in there earlier. So okay, let's continue on. Let's take a look to see. Again, can't remember who's next here, but we'll find out together. So let's take a look.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Mr. Holmes, for your years of service.
All right. This is Mr. Hurd. Now, Mr. Hurd, pretty good here because he's definitely not a big Trump fan. In fact, he's retiring. I think one of the reasons he's from Texas, was that, he didn't like the way Trump was operating. But still, though, he comes up and says the right thing. So, he does good on this. So you'll see by the time he gets to the end here, he says the right thing, and he's not going to vote. He didn't vote for the impeachment inquiry. He voted no on that. And if it comes to a full-blown impeachment, vote in the House, you can tell he's definitely voting no on that as well. So here you go.
To this country, and I appreciate y'all being here today. Throughout this process, I have said that I want to learn the facts so we can get to the truth. So why are we here? Because of two things that occurred during the President's July 25th phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The use of the phrase, "do us a favor," though, in reference to the 2016 presidential election, and the mention of the word Biden. I believe both statements were inappropriate, misguided foreign policy, and it's certainly not how the executive, current or in the future, should handle such a call. Over the course of these hearings, the American people have learned about a series of events that, in my view, have undermined our national security and undercut Ukraine, a key partner on the front lines against Russian aggression. We've heard of U.S. officials carrying uncoordinated, confusing, and conflicting messages that created doubt and uncertainty in Kyiv at a time when a new reformist administration has just taken office and was ready to fight corruption and work with us to advance other U.S. objectives. I disagree with this sort of bungling foreign policy. But through these hearings, many of my colleagues have unwittingly undermined the Ukrainian government by suggesting that it is subservient to the United States, and without the United States, they wouldn't be able to function. The Ukrainians, as you stated, Mr. Holmes, is in a hot war with Russia, and they are holding their own. We could benefit from the experience of the Ukrainians, not the other way around. While I thought the Intelligence Committee would actually be engaged in oversight of the intelligence and national security communities, unfortunately, we are not. We're here talking about one of the most serious constitutional duties we have as members of Congress, the impeachment and removal of the President of the United States. Over the past weeks, we've learned a few things. The officials on the July 25th call have many different opinions on whether the call was concerning or not, and just because Vice President Biden is running for president does not mean that corruption related to Burisma, Ukraine's largest natural gas company, and Americans' ties to it are not concerning. There's also a lot we do not know. We have not heard from Rudy Giuliani. We haven't heard from Hunter Biden. I'd like to know more about both of their activities, why they talk to whom and to whom. Despite promises from Chairman Schiff, we have also not heard from the whistleblower, something that can occur in a closed setting without violating his or her anonymity. We need to understand the motivations and level of coordination that happened prior to his or her submission of the complaint. Over the past few weeks and even today, it's been reiterated. In 2017, the Trump administration made the decision to provide lethal defensive aid to Ukraine after the Obama administration refused to do so. Ukraine is receiving all the security assistance as directed by Congress. President Zelensky has undertaken significant anti-corruption efforts, including eliminating the parliamentary immunity from prosecution. And, again, Mr. Holmes, you mentioned this today, under President Zelensky's leadership, we have finally seen some progress this fall towards ending the Russian occupation of eastern Ukraine. So where does this leave us? An impeachable offense should be compelling, overwhelmingly clear, and unambiguous, and it's not something to be rushed or taken lightly. I have not heard evidence proving the president committed bribery or extortion. I also reject the notion that holding this view means supporting all the foreign policy choices we have been hearing about over these last few weeks. To paraphrase Tim Morrison's testimony this week, every day the national conversation on Ukraine is focused on impeachment, not the conflict in the Donbass, not the illegal occupation of Crimea, not the need for reforms in Ukraine's government economy. It's a day where we are not focused on our shared national security interests with Kyiv. I hope that we won't let this very partisan process keep us from agreeing on how the United States of America and the rest of the world. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back my time, I'd like to make a statement for the record that has this committee been given proper notice as required by House Rule 11, Clause 2G3, that a business meeting was to follow last night's hearing, and had Mr. Conaway's point of order been appropriately recognized, I would have voted no on the committee's first motion to table during last night's impromptu meeting, and I yield back the balance of.
Yeah, basically, Schiff called the meeting, didn't really give anybody proper notice, and I guess Hurd wasn't there for it. But yeah, I mean, it's just one thing after another. When you watch this hearing, it was just again how they were cutting off the Republicans, how they were, just allowing witnesses, like, oh, you let the witness answer. It's like, well, this is cross-examination. You control the cross-examination. The witness doesn't. So when you're cross-examining somebody, this is supposed to be like, kind of a courtroom setting. Although these people don't look. None of them seem like none of the Democrats seem like they understand that. But when you're cross-examining somebody, you ask a question and you can clarify, you can go back and forth. And I think Conaway is up here next, and you see he runs into a jam with that. He's just trying to get some answers here. But anyway, let's take a look at this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hill, I don't think there's a lot of questions that one of Putin's primary objectives within the United States is to foment unrest within our nation, to cause us to have lose confidence in our elections, the results of the elections, those kind of things. There is tension, though, in conducting our businesses the way we should, and playing into Putin's hands. As an example, while I disagree with what we're doing here today, it's under our Constitution, and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle believe that they are functioning under that Constitution. These hearings, this issue is very divisive within our country, and is continuing to push that way. I think that plays into Putin's hands inadvertently. Maybe nothing we can do about that. But there are certain things we can do as individuals that wouldn't play into his hands. And one of them would be that the loser in the 2016 election has for 3 years continued to argue that because she won the popular vote, as she and her friends won the popular vote, that somehow the election was inappropriate and that we shouldn't trust it, that the Electoral College victory, which was resounding, shouldn't be trusted. Does that help Putin or play into the narrative that he would like for us to do, that our elections are somehow rigged and shouldn't be trusted?
Yes, it does.
So the Putin.
Yeah, see, that was an important answer. I mean, she admitted, in other words, this whole thing has just been one big mess. I mean, this whole thing started with, the DNC, and we'll get to Jim Jordan. I don't want to step on what he says, but Jim Jordan kind of lays it out there really, really good. In fact, why don't we skip over to Jim Jordan here. Let's take a look. Let's see if I get to Jim. I might have to skip over Nunes too. Let me see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hill, during your deposition, I asked you, was Christopher Steele's dossier a rabbit hole? Do you remember the answer you gave to that
Yes,
question?
I thought it was a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you also said a couple pages later in the deposition, or in the transcript that I have here of your deposition, that you thought he got played. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
I was struck by a number of things you said in your statement, a number of things I thought were right on the target, and one was on page 7. You said this: President Putin and the Russian security services weaponize our own political opposition research. And that is exactly what happened in 2016. Exactly what happened. You called it, you knew it, you saw it. The DNC hired Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired Christopher Steele, who talked to Russians, who gave him a bunch of dirt, bunch of National Enquirer garbage that he compiled in a dossier, and our FBI used it. They used it as part of their investigation that they opened in July of 2016, where they spied on 2 American citizens associated with the presidential campaign. My guess is that's probably never happened in American history, and exactly what Dr. Hill talked about is what happened in 2016.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine Putin probably didn't even realize how much the American media and how much the Democratic establishment and the Clinton campaign, how much they hated Donald Trump. I mean, because look, Putin used to run the KGB, right? And now he's like supreme leader of Russia. No intelligence information leaves that country without him knowing about it. I mean, if you want to end up, dead, and your family dead, then yeah, just go ahead and, go in the business for yourself and start, giving stuff to some former MI6 guy that you knew from years ago without telling, Vladimir Putin that, hey, I'm going to release this stuff about Trump. Are you kidding me? Okay, Putin authorized it. They probably went to Putin and said, hey, this guy sniffing around, he's worked for the Clinton campaign looking for dirt on Trump. And so he's like, okay, well, you can't tell a complete lie. It's got to be like a half lie. It's got to make some kind of sense. It's like, okay, Trump was over here in the Miss Universe. He hated President Obama, stayed in the same hotel. Okay, say he, peed on the bed, hired some hookers, and, all this other stuff. And just, handed it back to Steele. I'm sure Putin had no idea that the FBI would actually take that disinformation, the complete BS nonsense, and run with it. He figured the Clinton campaign would probably eat it. In his best dreams, he figured the Clinton campaign would use it, would put it like on a TV ad or something, or do one of those Access Hollywood release tapes, where they release it to the press, and there's Trump, oh, he's a terrible guy, oh, he should lose, that kind of stuff. I don't think even in his wildest dreams he knew how much the FBI, the bureaucracy, FBI, State Department, Justice, Director of National Intelligence, CIA, how much they hated Donald Trump, how much they were afraid of him getting to office because they knew he was going to be like, I hate to say it, he was going to be like Jimmy Carter and Admiral Stansfield Turner when they came into office, and Carter appointed Turner to run the CIA and fired 860 guys on it's called the Halloween Day Massacre. Look it up. October 31st, 1977. 860 guys, primarily clandestine guys, go down the road, and then that's how Stefan Halper gets involved because they get a little payback on Carter. They steal his debate preparation materials for the only debate that Carter had with Reagan in 1980 in the election, and they hand it off to the Reagan campaign. And Reagan comes across looking like a genius and slam dunks Carter and goes on to win the election. But I guarantee you, Putin had no idea the FBI hated Donald Trump this much. We're so afraid that he was going to uncover all the little deep secrets and all this other stuff, or that we had such a thing as a deep state. And like I said, the deep state, in my opinion, is not like the deep state club. It's just a series of like-minded civil servant individuals like that guy Holmes over there, like Ms. Hill. I'm in charge of this. I'm in charge of this. I run this. I coordinate this. It's me. And they hate the idea that in their mind they think okay, presidents come and go, but we're here to stay. We're in charge of policy. We're in charge of setting policy. At one point, this testimony, I won't go all the way back through all of it, but, Holmes was saying, we were trying to convince the president to send aid to the Ukraine. It's well, wait a second. You follow policy. You don't make policy. You make recommendations. You say, okay, if you send aid, then, this is what could happen. If you don't send aid, this is what could happen. You make the call. But they're lobbying on behalf of the country. These people get in country, or they get an agenda, and then they fight and they advocate for it on behalf of this other country instead of advocating on behalf of the United States. And it's really, really sickening and disheartening. But, excuse me. But yeah, so, and that's what's going on here. So anyway, let's go and continue on with this.
Exactly what she talked about. And for 10 months, Jim Comey and his team did an investigation. And after 10 months, they had nothing. Because we deposed Mr. Comey, and he told us after 10 months we didn't have a thing. But that didn't matter. That didn't matter. We got the Mueller investigation. $32 million, 19 lawyers, 40 FBI agents, 500 search warrants, 2,800 subpoenas, and they came back this spring, and what'd they tell us? No collusion, no conspiracy, no coordination. But the guys on the other side don't care. They don't care. They're doing what Dr. Hill said a number of important things in her opening statement. They're doing exactly what Dr. Hill talked about. The impact of a successful 2016 Russian campaign remains evident today. Our nation is being torn apart. Torn apart. I've never seen it this divided. And it is not healthy. It is not healthy for our culture, our country, not healthy for our nation, but that's what these guys are doing. No conspiracy, no coordination, no collusion, but they don't care. Now this whole impeachment thing, as the witness said yesterday, without an announcement from Zelensky about an investigation, they weren't going to get a call with the president, they weren't going to get a meeting with the president, they weren't going to get aid from the United States. But guess what? Ukraine, they got the call, they got the meeting, and they got the money, and there was never an announcement of any type of investigation. But they don't care. They're going to move forward. There's going to be some kind of report. They're going to send I assume, something to the Judiciary Committee, and the process is going to go forward, and there'll be a trial in the Senate, all based on some anonymous whistleblower who came forward with no firsthand knowledge, who's biased against the president, who worked with Joe Biden. Now all this. This is... Dr. Hill's right. She said it. We got to stop this. But they're not going to. And they're doing it all 11 and a half months before the next election. And I think maybe the most telling thing is what the Speaker of the House said Sunday. Speaker of the House said Sunday. This is scary. Speaker of the House said Sunday. National Sunday morning TV show. She said the president is an imposter. The guy that 63 million people voted for, who won an electoral college landslide, the Speaker of the House of Representatives called the President of the United States an imposter. Sad. It is sad what the country's going through. I wish it would stop, but unfortunately I don't think it is. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Welch.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty sad. I mean, she goes on there and says the president's an imposter. I mean, how can you just open your mouth and say something stupid like that? I mean, that's just outrageous. I mean, it's like they're so afraid. She's so afraid of losing that gavel because, if Trump, if he's not, removed by the Senate or this impeachment doesn't hurt him so much that his poll numbers go down and he can't bring a lot of people with him into the House, and she gets to keep the gavel and stay Speaker. But, if Trump's numbers go up and then he brings a lot of people on his coattails, a lot of down ticket people, Republicans, we retake the House. Well, that'll be one of the shortest lived speakerships ever. Will be one term, bye, and give the gavel back. And she's going to hate that. I mean, she wants to die as speaker. You can just see it and stuff like that. But yeah, this, hopefully let me see if we get to, got some interesting information on Fiona Hill and her friends and CrowdStrike and stuff. So let's see who's next here. But if it's Nunes, probably going to skip over that because it's pretty long, but it's really good, but it's like really long. So hold on. I might show at the end.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for...
Okay, now this guy here, okay, good. I was hoping this guy was up next. He's a Democrat, and you'd think he's a Republican because, he's an idiot, okay? I mean, I don't mean like Republicans are idiots. I mean, the questions he asks, every other Democrat up there was probably saying, what are you doing? Why are you asking these questions? Why are you bringing this to attention? You start talking about George Soros and about, all these other people and stuff. And about conspiracy theories, and right away I started doing some research on this, and I'm sure other people were like, wait a second, I didn't know that she was some globalist leftist, some person who got in with McMaster, and then McMaster, remember, was Trump's first national security advisor, and he fired him because he realized he was a globalist and and everything else, and we'll kind of get into some stories about McMaster here in a second. But listen to this guy. I mean, this guy, like I said, I don't mean Republicans are idiots. We're really smart, but you would think he's playing for the other team. I mean, This is crazy. I mean, I wasn't even going to tape this guy because I was, he was down real low but then he started talking this nonsense, and I'm like, well, okay, let's take a look.
Your service. Dr. Hill, you stated in your deposition you've been accused of being a mole for George Soros in the White House, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. I'm sure every other Democrat up there was like, what are you doing? Nobody was even talking about this. It's like, yeah, I didn't even hear about it. It's like, oh, like my ear is like, whoa, what's that? It's like you got accused of being a mole for George Soros. Oh, let's find out some more. It turns out she works for Brookings Institute, and they're big globalists, and of course, there's no country is not too small for us to take over and turn them into a democracy, that kind of thing. But anyway, here we go.
That's correct.
You said in your deposition, specifically, a conspiracy was launched against you by convicted felon Roger Stone on the show InfoWars, led by Alex Jones, right?
I don't think he was a convicted felon at the time that he launched this, so I didn't use those exact words. But it was indeed Roger Stone and Alex Jones on InfoWars in 2017. And in fact, just more recently, before Mr. Stone endured his trial, they were at it again, reprising the same InfoWars video and adding embellishments.
And they said, I'll quote what they said about you. We here at InfoWars, this is Roger Stone speaking, first identified Fiona Hill, the globalist leftist George Soros insider who had infiltrated McMaster's staff. He said that on May 31st, 2017. I presume you're not a globalist leftist Soros insider, correct?
I think my coal mining family would be very surprised to hear all of these things about me.
I'd agree.
Actually, leftist, perhaps not so much, but anyway, the left in Europe is a bit different from the left here, let's put it that way.
I agree.
It's funny. She didn't deny it. She goes, she just said, I think my family would be surprised to hear that. Well, that wasn't a denial. I bet they would be surprised to hear it. But anyway, let's take a look here at Mr. McMaster. Because I mean, again, every other Democrat up there must have been, especially Schiff too, was like, if he was paying attention, was like, what are you doing? I'm sure he got a good talking to. But anyway, let's take a look. Let me try to pull up McMaster here. All right, so let's see. What's this? I don't need that. So let's take a look. All right, so let me pull this over. All right. Sorry, this is H.R. McMaster's Wikipedia page. Again, it's all open source stuff. So let's take a look here. Anyway, so let's see. Post-military career. Let's see, he went to, in September 2018, McMaster began work. Let me highlight this. All right. So, September 2018, McMaster began work as a Bernard and Susan Liatoud visiting fellow at Stanford University's Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. He also holds a Fouad and Michelle Amji, senior fellowship at the Hoover Institution and serves as a lecturer in management. So, let's see here. So, anyway, let's see, let me get this off and this off. Okay, hold on. Let me get that off. Where was that? Okay, so we're back to McMaster. I'm trying to get to, let's see. Not there. Okay, anyway, let's get to Liatoud. Anyway, Liatoud's a big money maker around the world, big globalist kind of guy. And anyway, this is his son. And again, all things lead back to the Clintons because, why not? HA says, follow the Clintons, like follow the money, follow the Clintons. And you can always find the Clintons involved in these stories. So anyway, so Parker, this is their son. He was born in 1994. And so he's a polar venture environmental campaigner, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so climate change, he's been actively involved working on climate issues since the age of 14, interviewed world leaders, and let's see what else. Let's see, interviewed Vice President Al Gore, and let's see, outspoken on the need to address business versus climate change. Here we go. So he was in remarks from the main stage of the Clinton Global Initiative's 2014 annual meeting, tackling climate change. His parents are big donors as well. And see what else. So, blah, 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 blah. So, again, that's the foundation he's working for. McMaster's working for. Now, McMaster's also, when you see, then when you kind of get into, this whole CrowdStrike, okay, it all ties in, you'll see. So anyway, so here's CrowdStrike here. CrowdStrike was co-founded by, let's see, Dmitry Alperovich, right? Dmitry, this Russian guy. So, okay, so who's he? So let's take a look. So Dmitry Alperovich, and let's see, let me pull this up a little more for you guys. We'll make it a little bigger. All right. It should be good. Oh, maybe too big. Oh, okay. Well, it covers that up, but okay. You can see the story part. All right, Russian-born American computer security industry executive. And one of the things the media has been saying, like, Trump's saying CrowdStrike's, Ukrainian operation, they're friends with the Ukrainians. It's like, well, this guy's, he's born in Russia. Yeah, but what they don't say was, what the media leaves out, this is from this guy's own biography, okay, right here. So, I want you to take a look at this. Alperovich is an American citizen born in Russia who escaped to the United States with his family. Escaped. Okay, this is from his own bio. Okay, he wrote this in there. Who escaped to the United States with his family during the Soviet era. And that was 1994. Okay, so he's no big fan of Russia. Okay, so the idea, he's born in Russia. Well, you can't say anything bad. You can't say he's with the Ukrainians. No, he hates Russia. Okay, and also, you can't see it over here, and I'm totally covering. Back, let me see why I got two things here. Oh no, let's see. I don't know whose flag that is. Let's see. I don't know what that is. What's this? I got two flags. Oh, there's two of me on there. Well, let's find out why there's two of me on there. I don't know why there's two of me, but let's see. Oh, I know why. Hold on. Boom. Okay, now there's just one of me. All right, well, even one of me is too much for this because you can't see what I wanted you to read, so let's take a look. All right. So let's see if you can see that now. Oh, you can. Over here, you can't really see it, but over here it says Senior Fellow of the, kind of small. Anyway, where is it? Senior Fellow of the Atlantic Council. So, okay, what's the Atlantic Council? Let's take a look. This guy who's the founder of CrowdStrike, who's not like a Russian loyalist. He hates Russia. He escaped from Russia with his family in 1994. He had to flee, so he hates the place. Okay, so let's take a look and see what the Atlantic Council is. All right, Atlantic Council. And let's see, founder of the stated mission encouraging continuation of cooperation between North America and Europe. So basically, they just want us involved in Europe forever and ever and ever. All right, so let's see. Let's get down to, let's see who's on it. Eric Shinsky, a bunch of other globalist type people. All right, and let's see. Prime Minister of Estonia, and that's this guy over here. Let's see. Hopefully this will still punch up. President Ilves. So they got like Estonia, prior Prime Minister of Estonia, former Prime Minister of Ukraine on there as well. All these people who, of course, have an interest in us, going to war against Russia. Estonia is part of the Baltic states. And, of course, they just got their independence from the former Soviet Union recently, just, 25 years ago, I think it was, something like that. And he was their first prime minister. He's with the Atlantic Council as well. So, there's a whole bunch of wonderful, wonderful people there with the Atlantic Council. And, the funny thing about Fiona Hill, I'll show you this story. This was a op-ed she wrote in the Washington Post back in 2015. Now, the thing about Fiona Hill, this is back when Obama was opposed to giving military aid to the Ukrainians. And so she wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post, and there it is right there, Fiona Hill. And she was saying, you see the headline, what she says, how aiding the Ukrainian military could push Putin into a regional war. So she was against military aid back in 2015. So, of course, now that Trump holds it up for 55 days, it's like, oh, this is terrible. There you go. All right, let's see what we got here. At that. All right, so let's get back to the videos. Okay, when I click this over, it's going to start right up again. So here we go.
And the trope against Mr.
Now, here you're going to hear her, for some reason, give this real impassioned defense of George Soros. Why? I do not know, other than that she's a big George Soros fan, and George Soros, of course, is no fan of Russia, and George Soros is no fan of, well, actually, nobody should be a fan of George Soros. I mean, he's got his own agenda. He wants open borders, wants to pretty much destroy nation states, including ours, and he just basically wants to get wealthy over, chaos. When there's blood in the streets, buy land. So that's kind of what George Soros is about. Anyway, so here we go.
Soros, George Soros, was also created for political purposes. And this is the new protocols of the Elders of Zion. I'd actually intended to write something about this before I was actually invited to come into the administration because it's an absolute outrage.
I'm sorry you've been kind of wrapped up in these crackpot.
But anyway, so they... I couldn't believe that she... I can't believe this guy asked the question about George Soros. Was he trying to say, oh, look, Fiona Hill's a good person because she's George Soros' friend? This guy is a complete moron. But anyway, but good. I'm glad. So, okay, let's go on to the next guy. I'm not sure who this is. Let's see.
Thank you. I have stressed in these hearings that the whistleblower complaint was merely a...
All right, we're going to skip over Devin Nunes real quick here. This is it's almost nine minutes for Devin Nunes to speak. So let's just jump over to, we'll get through a couple of quick ones real fast, and we'll come back to Devin Nunes.
For yielding. I want to pick up where my colleague across the aisle, Congressman Holmes, left off earlier. Respectfully, Dr. Hill.
Oh, this is Radcliffe explaining to Hill, because Radcliffe pretty much laid out the entire defense and the entire offense as far as Ukraine interfering in the 2016 election, and so this idiot Democrat says, oh, he was mansplaining to you, like he was going to hold her hand, like, oh, you're just a little girl. It's a pretty tough lady sitting over there. You don't need to hold her hand, but so who's more sexist? Obviously, the guy who thinks he needs to hold this lady's hand, and I don't think she needs her hand held by anybody. But anyway, so here you go.
He was not defending you. He was defending himself and Democrats. I want to make sure the record is very clear. Ranking Member Nunes was correct. He correctly noted in his opening that Republicans, not Democrats on this committee, were the first ones to raise the issue of Russian interference in the 2016 election. The disagreement wasn't about Russian meddling. The disagreement was about whether or not President Trump conspired with Russia, a false allegation peddled by the Democrats generally and specifically by some Democrats on this committee. With that, Mr. Holmes, I want to turn to you and the part of the conversation, your testimony where you said you heard President Trump say, is he going to do the investigation?
Right. I just want to echo that sentiment and certainly lament the attacks that have been levied against our colleague Lee Stefanik on this panel, which have been vile and hateful. For those of you keeping score at home, the effort to accuse our president of coercion, extortion, or bribery with these witnesses as we now come to the closing session of this basically break down as follows. We have Kent and Ambassador Taylor who spoke of hearsay. Their hearsay of these matters that they said that they had heard were all statements that they'd heard from others who have also testified in front of us. So there's no one that's missing. There's no one out there. Kent and Taylor basically said that they'd heard it from Morrison and Sondland. Morrison indicated he'd heard it from Sondland. Sondland testified yesterday he'd heard it from no one on the planet. Vindeman and Morrison both have direct testimony of the phone call with the President of the United States. Beyond that, they only had contact with Sondland, and again, Sondland indicated he had contact with no one on the planet. Volker testified that he did have direct contact both with the Ukrainians and with the President of the United States, and indicated that the President of the United States did not condition either a phone call, a meeting, or aid upon Ukraine undertaking investigations, and also testified that the Ukrainians did not believe that either. We also have the direct statements from the President of Ukraine and the Foreign Minister that they did not feel any pressure to undertake investigations, and we also have the evidence that we're all very much aware of, which is they did not undertake any investigations. We also have Yovanovitch and Dr. Hill. Yovanovitch obviously left before the time period. Dr. Hill, we appreciate your being with us today, and Mr. Holmes. Dr. Hill, you have provided me probably the greatest piece of evidence that's before us to illustrate the problem with hearsay. So, you said, based on questions and statements, I have heard some of you on this committee, that'd be us, appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country. And perhaps somehow, for some reason, it was Ukraine. So this was held up by Devin Nunes. This is the report on Russian active measures that was voted on by all of us. It begins with this sentence. In 2015, Russia began engaging in a covert influence campaign aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Every one of us, a little small, like, effort on your part, Dr. Hill, and you would have known that what you just said was not true, what you had heard, but you felt the need to put it in your 8-page statement before you went on to tell us a bunch of other things that you heard about other people, no matter how convinced you were of, also which were not necessarily true. One of which was that you said that Ambassador Sondland met with Giuliani. Actually, Ambassador Sondland testified here that he had not, as ambassador, met with Giuliani. He'd briefly met him in his lifetime by shaking his hand, and Giuliani issued a statement that they had never met either. This is the problem with, no matter how convinced we are, Dr. Hill, no matter how much we believe we know that what we've heard is true, it is still just what we've heard. But so far in this hearing, in these series of hearings, the only thing that we have is Volker saying, I spoke to the president and I spoke to the Ukrainians, neither of which believed that aid was conditioned, neither of which believed that the president was requiring it, and Ambassador Sondland, which said no one on the planet told him that that was the case. That's the sole evidence. Now, I got to tell you, the one thing that's interesting is Ambassador Sondland did say it's his belief that a meeting with the president was conditioned upon investigations. Ambassador Volker, who I think is a man of very significant integrity, said that that was not the case. Now, even if Ambassador Sondland is correct, that somebody, and Dr. Hill, you testified, and again, it's hearsay, you don't know, that supposedly Mulvaney told him that, because he didn't testify to that. But let's say somebody beside the president told him that. You guys want to be the laughingstock of history to impeach a president of the United States because he didn't take a meeting? Oh, please, dear God. Please undertake that. Now, Mr. Holmes, I got to tell you, you say that you're there.
Is there a question for Dr. Hill?
Mr. Holmes, in your testimony, you said that Sondland said he loves your ass, and also said he'll do anything that you want. Mr. Holmes, that information had nothing whatsoever to do with the subject matter of any of these hearings. It was anecdotal. It was extraneous. Your statements that your interests are protecting Ukraine are very dubious when you embarrass President Zelensky by making those statements that you didn't have to make. Who cares that Ambassador Sondland said that? And you know you didn't embarrass Ambassador Sondland, you embarrassed Zelensky, because you know he got asked this question in his own country, and people are hearing that statement as if it's true.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
It's totally dubious of you to do that. For you to do
Mr. Carson,
that.
you are recognized.
I yield back.
Get to answer.
Yep, excuse me. All right, so yeah, that was the last I had there. Now we got Nunes' statement. I think Nunes' statement is worth going through, and Nunes, of course, just sums up this entire mess, this entire disaster, and I think he does a really good job on it. So let me see. I think it's just one back, and let me see. Should be here. Yeah, here it is.
Thank you. I have stressed in these hearings that the whistleblower complaint was merely a pretext for Donald Trump's political opponents to do what they've been trying to do since he was elected: oust the president from office. A brief timeline will illustrate the wide range of extraordinary attacks his administration has faced. I'm going to start in June of 2016 when Donald Trump was just a candidate. On behalf of the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS hires Christopher Steele to write the Steele dossiers, a collection of false allegations attributed to Russian sources claiming that Donald Trump is a Russian agent. Fast forward to January 6th of 2017. FBI Director James Comey briefs President-elect Trump on the Steele dossier. The briefing is leaked to CNN, and soon afterwards, BuzzFeed publishes the dossiers. January 20th, on President Trump's inauguration day, the Washington Post runs a story headlined, quote, "The campaign to impeach Donald Trump has begun." January 30th, 10 days later, the whistleblower's current lawyer tweets, hashtag coup has started, first of many steps, hashtag rebellion, hashtag impeachment will follow immediately. March 22nd, Democrats on this committee falsely declare on national TV that they have more than circumstantial evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. July 12th, an article of impeachment is filed against President Trump in the House of Representatives. November 15th, Democrats file additional articles of impeachment against President Trump. As you see, this was just in President Trump's first in office. He was subjected to a coordinated smear operation designed to falsely portray him as a Russian agent, as well as attempts to impeach him. This all occurred before his now infamous call with President Zelensky. In 2018, the attacks continued, often from executive branch officials charged with implementing his policies. On February 2nd, 2018, Intelligence Committee Republicans release a memo revealing that the FBI used fabrications of the Steele dossier to get a warrant to spy on a Trump campaign associate. September 5th, the New York Times prints a column by an anonymous Trump administration official who explains that he and other senior officials are, quote, working diligently from within to frustrate parts of Trump's agenda, unquote. December 7th, James Comey admits to Congress the Steele dossier was unverified before and after the FBI used it to get a warrant to spy on a Trump campaign associate. The Russia hoax continued to be the main focus of attacks going into 2019, but when that entire operation collapsed, a new impeachment pretext had to be found. May 4th, 2019, on national television, a Democratic congressman proclaims, quote, "I'm concerned that if we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected," unquote. July 24th of this year, Special Counsel Robert Mueller testifies to Congress about his report, which debunked the conspiracy theory that the Trump campaign associates conspired with Russia to hack the 2016 elections.
Yeah, I had forgotten that Mueller had testified in front of Congress on the 24th, and that's pretty much was the end of games regarding, the Russia collusion story. And so, I mean, the very next day, Trump makes a phone call, and then, of course, the whistleblower and Vindman and friends are out. Okay, let's start something new. And, they've been planning this for a while. You can tell they didn't have this, in the can somewhere. They've been working up this for a while. And here's the problem. Excuse me. It's like when a new administration comes into office, they're given all these advisors from the State Department, from the National Security Agency, from the CIA, from the Pentagon, Defense Department. They're given all these advisors, like Trump's advisor. Who was it? Jennifer. God, I can't remember her name, but the one testified, I think with Vindman. They're just giving these people. And these people are from, a lot of them from the prior administration, obviously. Like, they were all from the Obama administration. He had been in office for 2 terms, 8 years. So for 8 years, they were, loyal to him. Well, here comes somebody new. And of course, Trump's policies, Trump's Secretary of State, their policies totally different than the policies of the Obama administration. But these people have been going in the same direction for 8 years. Then, well, you can almost say for 16 under George W. Bush, pretty much same policy, if you will, when it comes to foreign policy. So I mean, they're going in one direction for like 16 years. And then comes Trump and says, okay, no, we're changing. I got elected based on what I said I was going to do, and we weren't going to do business as usual. So we need you to stop, turn around 180 degrees, and go the other way. Well, these people don't want to stop on a dime. They're like, well, no, this is how we're going to do it. So you get all these basically like spies, in your midst, but there's really not much you can do about it because you need the experts like, the from the NSA, like the expert on the Ukraine that works the Ukraine desk and the Russia desk and the Lithuania desk and the French desk and the English desk and all these people from the State Department and the NSA and CIA and they just part of your entourage, they're part of your staff when you travel, and they're in the room and they're listening to your phone calls and they're prepping you for these phone calls. And if you tell them, hey, get bent, I don't want to hear about it, well, you see what happens. They will get revenge. When Stalin took over the Soviet Union, they were deciding on who was going to get what job. And the job he took was party secretary. And, there's Trotsky sitting there saying, oh, yeah, that's a job for a dog, and right in front of Stalin, because Trotsky was, real close with Lenin, and Stalin wasn't. So, so he goes, oh, that's like just an information job, just passing information. You're the party secretary. You're in charge of communications and information between everybody. Well, Stalin's like, oh, okay. Well, Stalin thought, okay, I'm going to use this and I'm going to take over. So, like, the party secretary now is like the person in charge of the Communist Party. It wasn't designed to be that way. Because what he did was he was controlling the flow of information and, wiretapping people, listening to phone calls and everything. He was in charge of the switchboards, the communications, everything. So then he was using all this information and working his way and taking this person out, putting this person against this person and everything else. So basically we have the State Department, CIA, Defense Department, Pentagon, agency, Department of Justice, here's all these people. They're all in charge of the information. You rely on them. You need these experts, unless you want to start getting on Google machine and start looking it up yourself. And a lot of these people do have expertise, but they also have an agenda. That's the problem. They have an agenda, or they're loyal. Like Binman, he's loyal to the Ukraine. He's from there. He left there when he was 3. He fled. He wants to go back. He wants the country to be great. So he's looking out for Ukraine policy more than he's looking out for U.S. policy. That showed true all the way through his answers when he was testifying. You can tell. In fact, they even offered him the job of defense minister 3 times. And he says, oh, it's just a joke. Well, you don't make a joke 3 times unless you're a really bad joke teller. So, no, they wanted him to be defense minister. And why would they think they could offer him that job? Why would they think he would leave the United States military, leave the United States, renounce his citizenship to the United States and become defense minister of Ukraine? Why? Because they knew they had a strong advocate. Now, we don't send these guys over there to advocate on behalf of the countries they're working in. You're advocating for U.S. policy. Okay, and that policy is set by the chief executive, by the president of the United States through his secretary of state. That's your job. You are a foot soldier. You take orders and you march that way. Now, you don't have to take those orders. You can quit. But none of these people want to quit because then they won't feel important. Because we get into the private sector, and I don't mean the private public sector. I don't mean where they work for some like think tank or defense contractor or something like that. I mean the real private sector. We have to go earn your money. Like they said in Ghostbusters, oh, go work in the private sector. You go, that's tough. Those people want results. Yeah, well, there you go. So, they don't want to leave. So instead, they're just going to say, well, we'll just change his mind. Like Holmes said, we were trying to convince the president. Well, wait a second. The president said this is what he wants to do. Why are you trying to convince him? Give him the options. Give him, okay, here's 5 options you can do. It's your call. We recommend this one. That's it. Stop. You don't keep trying to sabotage, and then if you don't like what you're hearing, like, this guy Holmes, when he was getting kind of, put down there, I didn't show the whole thing, as far as, releasing that statement about, as far as, oh, he loves your ass. He said he told a whole bunch of people. He went on vacation with some people, to the cabins or somewhere in the mountains, I don't know. And he told his friends, like guys like he, probably went to school with, guys who weren't necessarily in the CIA or the State Department. So because he based it because I thought they'd find it interesting. It's like, you don't share that. You know, you are there. You're like a fly on the wall. You hear nothing, you see nothing. Okay, you're in the company of people. They expect you, use your discretion to keep your mouth shut. You know, it's one thing if he gets subpoenaed and he has to tell what he tells. That's totally different. But you don't go around telling all your friends about it. Hey, I heard the ambassador talking to the president of the United States. No. That's not how that works. Okay? You're supposed to keep your mouth shut. Well, this guy doesn't care because his big thing is sabotaging. And let me ask a big question to everybody. Where were all these guys during the, Obama administration when, Chris Stevens, the ambassador, who everybody loved at the State Department supposedly, when he got killed over there in Benghazi and took, 3 guys with him, also got killed. I didn't hear anybody leaking anything back then. Did you hear anybody from the State Department going, oh, that's terrible, they killed Chris, and they didn't send any aid, they wouldn't send any arms, they didn't give him enough of a security detail, Obama wouldn't let the jets go to do a flyover. We all saw the movie 13 Hours. If you haven't, check it out. They wouldn't even authorize the jets to do a flyover just to scare these people away or send any troops or anything. Nothing, and it was a disaster. They barely, I don't know, it was a miracle they lived, to be honest with you. So, that could have been a real disaster. It could have been like probably, I think it was like 100, 150 people in that compound. They could have all been dead. But you didn't hear any leaks or anybody going to Congress or whistleblowing and talking about phone calls that, the president had with Putin or the president had with this guy or this conversation, in the war room, about not sending aid to save these Americans or Chris Stevens or anything. No, you didn't hear any of that. Well, because, Obama played ball with them and they played ball with him. Everybody just went along and everything went bad. Like not sending aid to Ukraine. If he had sent military aid to Ukraine in 2012, then possibly Russia might not have invaded in 2014. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But anyway, so let's go on and continue with Mr. Nunes.
July 25th, just the very next day, a new anti-Trump operation begins as someone listens to the president's phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky and leaks the contents to the so-called whistleblower. September 13th, Democrats on this committee take the extraordinary step of issuing a press release related to the whistleblower's complaint. October 2nd, it's revealed that Democratic staff on this committee had contact with the whistleblower before he submitted his complaint to the Inspector General, contradicting Democrat denials that such contact had occurred. October 31st, Halloween, probably the most appropriate day. Democrats in the House of Representatives vote to open an official impeachment inquiry against President Trump. What you've seen in this room over the past 2 weeks is a show trial. The planned result of 3 years of political operations and dirty tricks. Campaigns waged against this president. And like any good show trial, the verdict was decided before the trial ever began. After all, after denouncing the president for years as a Russian agent and a threat to democracy, how could the Democrats not impeach him? If they don't move to overthrow him, it would indicate that they don't really believe their own dire warnings about the threat he poses. The Democrats only needed a pretext. When their Russian dossiers and investigations failed to do the job, they moved to Plan B, the Ukraine hoax. This spectacle, with its secret depositions and mid-hearing press conferences, is not meant to discover the facts. It was designed to produce a specific storyline to be pushed forward by the Democrats and their supporters in the media. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach Thanksgiving, Speaker Pelosi has just made clear, just today, USMCA, free trade deal with Canada and Mexico, that will boost our economy, won't be signed this year.
Yeah, that's amazing. The USMCA, the idea that Trump was able to negotiate that with Mexico, and get a win-win deal. I mean, yeah, it could have been better for us, but it's a win-win for us. We come out definitely net positive on the deal, and we definitely come out big. Trudeau got really screwed over on that one. Well, because Trudeau on the just a quick tangent here on the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement. Trudeau was kind of being a jerk, and Friedland, I think, was his trade representative's name. She used to write for the London Times, I think, or Financial Times, I can't remember. But anyway, so she badmouthed Trump while she was in Thailand at some conference and did it publicly. So anyway, Trump heard about that, so he banned her from the White House. So basically, he just stopped talking to the Canadians. Well, the Mexicans weren't going to wait around. You know, they said their trade representative was in the White House, inside the White House, 42 times. Meeting with Trump and officials and trade representatives, and he had dinner with, I think him and his wife had dinner with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump like a couple of times. I mean, you know, they really worked it, and they got a great deal. So it's a great deal. It's just sitting there because they don't want to take it up because they're busy doing this. Well, I mean, a lot of people are going to benefit. Plus, they're always concerned about, the Mexicans and stuff. Well, that deal provides a lot of great stuff for people in Mexico. You know, like unless the company over there is paying, like a car manufacturer is paying $15 an hour, they have to pay tariffs. If they pay $15 an hour to the employees, they don't have to pay any tariffs. Well, that's a hell of a lot of money in Mexico. $15 an hour. That's pretty good money here. You know, it's not great money, but it's good money. So, I mean, they're just letting that sit. Because, they're too busy, which is a joke. I mean, get something done. They've been in there since January. What have they done? Nothing. They haven't done anything. They said they're going to do all these great things. Meanwhile, they're doing is chasing around Russia, chasing around now Ukraine, and, chasing around Stormy Daniels, whoever. So, I mean, but they're not getting anything done. And meanwhile, that's a great trade agreement. It's just sitting out there doing nothing. So, anyway, let's continue on.
So I hope Mr. Schiff will clarify how much longer we will waste on this effort and what other vital legislation he's willing to sacrifice for this impeachment crusade. Will there be even more secret depositions accompanied by the usual flood of Democratic leaks? Will we have more public hearings with Democrat witnesses but not ours? Minority are in the dark about what this committee will be doing when we return. And so is America. James Madison warned us about the danger posed by the tyranny of the majority. To avoid that threat, our founders created a constitutional republic. But is there a better example of the tyranny of majority than the way this impeachment process has been run in the House of Representatives? A process that is grossly unfair can only stem from a cynical majority that is willing to break long-established precedents, trample on legitimate minority concerns, and impose absolute will on this body through sheer force of numbers. Exploiting the Intelligence Committee as a venue for impeachment has been one of the grossest abuses in a process filled with cynical manipulations, large and small. But this farce will soon move to the Judiciary Committee, where impeachment rightfully belongs. I wish my Republican colleagues well in fighting this travesty and defending the idea, which at one time received bipartisan support not long ago. But the American people's vote actually means something. Yield back.
Anyway, I know that was like excellent. Let me get myself up here. So let's see. Yeah, I thought. Excuse me. Yeah, I thought he did it's kind of low here. There we go. There we go. That's better. Anyways, I thought Nunes kind of wrapped it up really good. I thought he did an excellent job there. Oh, let me get me off of here. There we go. All right. So, yeah, I thought Nunes kind of summed it up. I like the timeline, and even I forgot that, Mueller testified on July 24th. I know we covered it on this channel, but, the fact that just, the next day Trump's on the phone and these guys are already trying to figure out, okay, what do we got to do now, right? Well, okay, well, here we go. And again, they got this whole thing set up with a whistleblower with Vindman and, these whole cast of characters. They've been wanting to get rid of him since he got elected. As soon as he got elected, all these people in the State Department and everything else, they were all trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do next? Because, remember, a lot of this started with the State Department, the whole the Russia collusion thing. That was through, a lot of that was through the State Department. Victoria Nuland, her hands are all over it as well. Hunter Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, that's Victoria Nuland again, that's the aide again. I mean, again, the Ukrainian embassy going through State Department, Alexandra Chalupa, who we're probably going to hear about if it gets to the Senate, getting paid $400,000 for like 10 years, and she's over there in the Ukraine pulling up dirt on Manafort, gets the famous black ledger from the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians give it to her, knowing damn well that Manafort's going to resign from the campaign. That's going to hurt Trump's campaign, hurt him getting elected. Trump defies all odds, gets a new campaign chairman, I think, right there in September, and somehow still manages to win. So, yeah, I mean, amazing. And we're watching this all in real time. You know, again, like I said on the title, beware of the civil servants. You know, again, the famous line from history was it was the civil servants who gave Hitler, his power. Who put Hitler in power, the civil servants, the bureaucrats, the ones that, Laura Ingraham did a good spot on this. She had Reagan's speech from quoting Calvin Coolidge, warning us about the bureaucrats, the civil servants, how they're, impediment to democracy, how they think they run things, and they're accountable to no one. And, to them, democracy is just a big inconvenience. Like, that stupid president. Oh, that kind of like even the way this guy was looking at the congressman, like, oh, like, who are you to ask me questions? I've been out there for 17 years in the field, buddy. I know everything about this country. I know way more than you, and you're going to ask me questions? Who are you? You just did the smugness, the arrogance. Like, they think they know something. They don't know anything. If you want to run the country, run for office. Try that. Call it a democracy, a republic. So anyway, hey, I've been on now for about an hour and 40 minutes or so. And we a few minutes there in the beginning we weren't on for. Well, the zombie was on in my place. It was a special stand-in zombie at the very beginning of this show. So for all those who got to see the zombie and got to listen to the music with the zombie and seeing the zombie was engaged, then you got that. If you missed it, you can watch it on the replay. You'll see for the first few minutes the zombie. But anyway, guys, I just want to say thanks so much. Thanks for everybody who's been in the chat. Really good, intelligent chat. I want to thank all the moderators. Great job. Just having that blue wall out there keeps a lot of nefarious people away, so much appreciated there. And I want to thank everybody who's watching us and will be watching us later. And for Carl's opinion, this is Carl. Have a great night, everybody. You take care. Bye-bye.